Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Hello. I hope everyone's okay. Looks like I'm on Etherenet. I guess they took over. And so I don't know what to do now. Am I supposed to just give everything back to Comcast? It's a mess. Anyway, hi, Chris. Oh, your plumbing is not cooperative. I'm so sorry. Yes, I have a little bit of lipstick. Hi, Melissa from Texas. Hi, Sandy Miller. Hi, Felicia Gunthrope. Hi, Maura. Hi, Pamela Doss. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Deborah Perro, for being here. Kay Travel Tarot, welcome. Dr. K, hello. Connie Morris, hello, welcome. Hi, Barb Young. Today is a fun talk, and I'm kind of excited about it. It's a talk that is available. Did we open this to the public, or is this just open to members? I can't remember. But this is our Saturday get together. It's for members only. As many of you know, I'm a remote viewer. I'm a heart-centered remote viewer, but I'm also a medical intuitive and a naturopathic doctor. I went to medical school. So what we like to do on Saturdays, hi, Catherine, great to see you, is we like to take care of ourselves. It's spa days. We spend a little bit of extra time. We share little hints on how we can take better care of ourselves. And yeah, so that's what's going on here. And my cable looks to be, I don't seem to need a cable box. Well, I don't watch, what would be the point, right? I don't know. I'm confused. I don't understand how these things work. I'm just using internet. I don't watch the news. I mean, I don't watch I do watch the news, but I watch everything on YouTube and stuff. But anyway. Oh, hi, Amy. Welcome, welcome. Is everybody excited about today's topic? All right. I think we're ready to get started. We've got about 87 people. If you decide that you'd like to be a member, if you're not a member, please think about doing so to support the channel. And if you'd like to learn more about living a healthy lifestyle, affordable lifestyle, then these classes are available at the fairies and angels level. We try to keep it affordable for everybody. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about what we know as scientists about how to live long. What do we know? What do the facts tell us? If you want to start aging in reverse, there are things that we know through science that is irrefutable that is going to help you become younger. Isn't that cool? So today we're going to talk about some of the studies that have come out of Harvard and some of the studies that have come out of other places. What is the science of aging? How can we slow down the aging process? Some ideas that we can come up with. Looks like it's backwards, but that's cool. I'll translate. So who doesn't want to get younger, right? The thing I would say is that once you make a decision that you are going to fix it, then you know you're going to fix it. So here's a private story about me. So I'm 59 years old, and I am best friends with another psychic, Darlene Christopher. If you want to get a good second opinion, check out Christopher's Lamp in Seattle. But anyway, So I have been irresponsible with my health, full disclosure. I've been eating a ton of ice cream. I've been lying around the apartment. I've been partaking of certain things I should not be partaking. I've just gotten lazy and I've gained a lot of weight. And I can't say no to Ben and Jerry's. Of course, I can say no. It's that you don't want to say no, right? So my best friend, the psychic, who's not a medical intuitive, but she is a psychic, she called me on the phone the other day and she said, I had the strangest dream with you in it. I saw this yellow bilious fluid floating around your heart. What does that mean? And, you know, uh, the heart loves fatty acids. And the reason why the heart loves fatty acids so much is because fatty acids store a lot of energy. So when we think about fatty acids, fat stored in the heart. So when we think about what fat looks like in the heart, it's literally yellow fat, similar to the fat, the adipose that can go around our belly, which is mesenchyme fat, right? So it's the fat that is there that is stored in the event of a famine. And it's stored around the abdomen. It's very hard to get rid of. And that's the mesenchyme fat. It's this area here. And it's so independent, that fat, that we think about the mesenchyme as a separate organ, don't we? We think about that whole area as actually a separate organ. So if your cortisol is stressed, say, for example, you're living in Ireland 800 years ago, and there are all these feasts, and you had the serpent moon last month, and everybody fell in love, and then you got the harvest moon, so everybody's going to be harvesting the oats. So what are people doing? They fatten up in the summer, and then comes famine time. So in famine time, you are preparing to go without. You are preparing to fast. And so what's happened in the in modern living is that we don't fast anymore. We don't fast and we are overfed, and yet we have stress levels that may be the same as our ancestors. And so what's happening is the stress is causing the cortisol to go up, and cortisol goes up when your body thinks it's facing famine. So what does it do? It holds on to the mesenchyme. It holds on to the fat. The other part of us that loves fat is our heart, and that's because the heart requires a lot of energy, right? It requires a lot of energy, and so it's gonna gobble up whatever gives it the most energy, and fat, has a ton of energy. For every molecule of a carbohydrate, you're going to get how many, calories? Maybe 7. And so if you're eating a protein, which is a hard way to get a sugar, sorry, I got a seed in my tooth. And if you are trying to get a protein, maybe 7, maybe 9, but you have to calculate also for the energy burned. Whereas if it's fat, it's going to be 11. So that's why the heart, which needs a ton of energy, wants the fat, because if you're living a natural life, you're not going to get coronary artery disease. You're going to be only taking as much fat into your body as your heart needs for healthy functioning. Anything more than that puts you at risk of coronary artery disease. So if you were to open a page right now separate from this page and go to Google Images and Google um, coronary artery disease, or just pictures of fat around the heart, fatty buildup around the heart, you'll see that a tissue similar to the mesenchyme around the heart that protects the heart literally attracts fat. And this was once a really great thing, right? but it's not such a great thing anymore. So one of the things that studies have come out of Harvard have to do with calorie restriction. And that was not necessarily saying that people changed their existing diets, but it was saying that by calculating uh, a calorie restricted diet, by calculating and reducing your calories, you've already slowed down how quickly you're aging. And that's because when we burn fuel, we damage our cells. We damage our cells through something called free radicals, which are the products of burning glucose. But unfortunately, it causes tremendous damage. And so consequently, we see aging, wrinkles, right, are a sign of aging. Our organs tucker out. So too many calories can cause us to have digestive upset. It can cause pancreatitis and overwork of the pancreas, or the overwork of the pancreas can cause it to decline. It's associated with increased risk for diabetes later in life, a lower functioning of insulin-producing cells. So we want to think about calorie restriction as one of the most important things that we can do to take care of ourselves. So my friend, back to my friend who's the psychic, I was being extremely irresponsible. Now, here's what my psychic didn't know. She didn't know that in July of last year, may he rest in peace, my older brother had died of a heart attack, and that I'd had my blood tested and I have a certain clotting thing. So I got to take care of myself, right? So she did a remote view, spirit center, and said, your friend Whimsy, you got to call her. So if my instincts were to say, "Oh, that's silly, blah, 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 blah. I'm not being irresponsible with my health. I'm not engaging in bad habits," right? Because when somebody calls you out on your stuff, you don't want to admit it. You want to say, "No, man, I'm good." But I respect her too much as a friend. I'm godmother to her children. Like, yeah, I'm being really irresponsible with my health. So here's the good news. You can heal your life and you can reverse the aging process, and probably you're going to be spending a lot less money. It will be cost effective. So when we talk about poverty, poverty is not the same as frugality. Frugality is when you live a simple life and you pull back on extremes so that you have a little bit extra for a rainy day. Moderation in all things rather than any kind of extremism. So the first thing we see in the studies, whether it was rat studies or studies in orangutans, I think they did studies, this idea of calorie restriction. If you go to myfitnesspal.com, you can go ahead and calculate what calorie restriction would be for you. So the first thing you want to do is you want to calculate your BMI. And you can Google calculate my BMI. And what that's going to do is that's going to tell you whether or not you're overweight or underweight. And the National Institute for Health has a very nice BMI calculator if you want to do that. So the first thing is to determine what your weight is, determine what your BMI is. You can calculate it. Mine, for example, we won't talk about it. Suffice to say, I'm overweight, which I've never been in my entire life. So things have to change. So calorie restriction. So if you go to myfitnesspal.com and say you're 20 pounds overweight and you want to lose a pound a week, 2 pounds a week, they will calculate it for you. But this idea is that most people can safely reduce their caloric intake by about a third if they are overweight. And so and you can also calculate what's called your base metabolic rate, which is how many calories you need simply to have your metabolism function. For example, my metabolic rate is about 1,450 calories a day. So if I was unconscious asleep, just to have my organs functioning would require 1,450 kcal. So a lot of people will start with their BMR, and then when they get to a baseline, they'll increase to stabilize to say 16, 1700, depending upon their level of activity. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Welcome, Pamela Doss. Thanks for joining. So the second thing we're looking at that has to do with the type of foods that people are eating, like if you're looking at nutritional density, and I have some great books I would recommend. I often will recommend Eat to Live by Joel Fuhrman. You can get it at most used bookstores because it's been around forever. Eat Joel Fuhrman. Eat to Live by Joel Fuhrman. And so, and what we're looking at, what the studies are showing is that we actually don't want to go on a high protein diet. And while people often will feel good temporarily on a high protein diet, over time, there are some pretty serious consequences. Oh, that sounds very good, Miter. You're in very good shape. So, I'm sorry, I lost my concentration. I don't know where we were at. So anyway, so you want to be focusing on a nutrient dense plant-based diet. Doesn't mean you have to be 100% vegan, but by lowering your protein level to a minimal amount, you're going to be able to protect your organs, which may have a hard time on a higher protein diet, which can also cause you to become more acidic. And if you're more acidic, that's going to do a couple of things. Number one, the body attempts to buffer the acid with calcium. And so that's one of the reasons why when people are more acidic in their diet, they are at higher risk of osteopenia, osteoporosis. Because what's happening in the blood is that the blood is releasing more calcium from the bone in order to neutralize the uric acid in the blood that's been brought into the blood by consuming large amounts of meat. Because meat is broken down into amino acids, which then are processed by the liver into urea. So it goes through the venous system and is converted to urea. Now, what happens if your kidneys can't get rid of it? You're then getting gout. You're going to start having urea crystals coming out through the skin. So we know that a high protein diet over time is going to lead to increases in acidity and increased risk for osteoporosis and osteopenia. We also know from our studies with aging and blue zones that we want your diet to be whole foods, predominantly plant-based. And when we're talking about whole foods, predominantly plant-based, we're saying that you want to have about a third to a half of the plate be from the plant kingdom, just plants. So you can have a salad. If you're having trouble with your digestion, you can start steaming or slow cooking your food or starting with soups of just chopped up vegetables. There's some great vegan soup recipes that are going to help you digest those nutrients. Vitamin A is not destroyed, neither is beta carotene in cooking. If you feel that you need to slow cook the food to make it more digestible. But you want it to be about a third to a half of your plate, and you want it to be multicolored. Yeah, we're not advocating vegan, and we're not advocating any kind of extreme diet. So when we're talking about a third to 50% of your plate being plant-based, and you want it to be the colors of the rainbow, like I steamed some beets recently, and that was kind of nice. I was able to have the beets with my broccoli and have a little nice flavor there. And then if you are going to pick a starch, you want the starch to be nutrient dense and you want it to have a low glycemic index. And that's because the studies have also shown that when we regulate our insulin and when we keep our insulin stable, we are also going to slow down the aging process. So when we think about things that are sweet, we're thinking about terms like glycemic load and glycemic index. So you've calculated your BMI, you've calculated your BMR, your base metabolic rate, and you've also probably wanted to calculate your protein. And you can Google calculate your protein. Now, there are different schools about how to calculate your protein. We usually go by point 0.8 kilograms per ounce or something. No, not ounce. I can't remember what it is, per gram or something like that. So, for example, according to UNESCO, I need about 60 grams bare minimum of protein to be healthy, 60 to 70 grams, right? So, and then if you're looking at low end of UNESCO, maybe 50 for temporary. Now, not all proteins are alike, which is something that Marjorie, wait a minute, who mentioned she didn't feel well on a vegan diet? Somebody said that they didn't feel well on a vegan diet. Aries girl. So in response to Aries girl, so you want to take, you have to understand also that with plant-based proteins, they may not be as bioavailable or as easy to digest. So one of the things I always do is I tell people to start with a vegan protein, and a vegan protein shake in the morning, like a protein and greens by Paradise. I always choose that one. First off, it's inexpensive. You can get it on iHerbs. I think I got 2 for 1 or something like that. It was really amazing. And if you go ahead and you Google, protein and greens by Paradise, protein, and there are a few companies put out protein and greens, but the best one is by the company Paradise. And that's because it's literally got all of the adaptogenic herbs in it, all of the medicinal mushrooms like the reishi. I mean, it's got the astragalus, the shasam. I mean, it's one of the most, it's got all the greens, it's got all the berries, and it's 20 grams of protein. Now, if you're calculating for how not everyone can digest plant proteins, say you're only going to be able to digest 80%. So say your doctor says you need to have 70 grams of protein a day to be healthy. So what we would say is if you're only absorbing 80%, you can add some animal protein to supplement. So the animal protein you're going to want to think about is going to be about 10% of total caloric intake for the day usually. So if your total caloric intake is 1,800 calories, you would have 1,800 calories of chicken breast, or 180 calories of chicken breast. Skinned and boiled would be the healthiest way because you'd be removing the fat and you would just be getting the protein. Or roasted, right, where the fat comes off it, right? And you're only taking about 4 ounces would give you that supplemental protein. So your first meal, you're getting adequate protein your first meal, and you're doing it plant-based. So you've knocked out one plant-based meal. If you're concerned about having your protein go too low, your lunch, you can have an animal protein. I always tell people first choice should be fish because you're also going to increase your omegas. Now, if you're asking about who's least likely to have a heart attack, it's at least one fish meal a week. If you can't get wild-caught salmon, there are actually some lake-grown fish that are environmentally safe, like trout, and you're still going to be able to get omega-3s, mahi-mahi, etc. Just talk to your local butcher and person who's supplying your fish and find out what the healthiest, cleanest options are for you. But again, it's going to be between 4 and 6 ounces. You can have that 3 times a week, and that's probably going to be great for heart health. So again, the studies are showing in terms of questions about DNA, we do have what are called the zones in answer to a question that Andrea is talking about. And that's important also. And I am an anthropologist. Specifically, I'm a medical anthropologist. And I want to say that when we think about diets and what our ancestors ate, we have to also understand that most human beings, about 70 to 80% of us, evolved in what were known as temperate zones, with a diet that was about 80 to 90% plant based because it was easy to harvest and it didn't require a lot of energy to pick nuts and seeds. And then men would hunt about 3 to 5 times a week. And that's pretty much what we find is the best diet for the human body. If you're talking about the extreme 10% in the north, 10% in the south, sub-Sahara Africa, or if you're talking about extreme north like the Inuit, obviously higher amounts of protein because of a lack of availability of plant life. Yeah. All right. So you've calculated your protein restriction. Again, you can look at UNESCO and those scores. And of course, you want to play with your body just like somebody had just made, Andrea said some good things, the nurse. Play, if it doesn't feel right, play with it. So you want, for example, if you can't eat that much raw vegetables and your fiber is too high, you may want to work up to it and you may want to make sure that you're slow cooking your vegetables. There's also some really great tips for slow cooking your vegetable soup so that it's nutrient dense. You want to put the hard root vegetables in first and boil those first, and then you add the tomato and the spice, etc. The peas towards the end, your protein. But again, the idea is, yeah, go ahead and let yourself have 180 kcal of, protein. Now, there's a couple of doctors that are working with these studies. Caldwell Esselstyn, Forks Over Knives. If you haven't seen that movie, I would recommend taking a look at Forks Over Knives. I would also refer you to the studies of the spectrum diet. I like the spectrum diet because the spectrum is a spectrum of what we know. Oh God, what's his name? Who put out the Spectrum diet? Oh, Esselstyn, and then who put out Spectrum? He's from Texas. The Spectrum diet. All right. So the Spectrum diet is understanding just what the person said about genetics. You want to play with the spectrum. For example, we know we have friends who are Native American from the plains, and they calculated a much higher protein content. She married a woman who was vegan, and they were at the Pride Parade. And she's Dakota Sioux. You know how cold it is there? You have to eat meat. They would have frozen to death. So she goes and she gets these big beef ribs, and she was started eating these beef ribs. And her wife was like, I can't look. I can't look. She's like, honey, if you don't want to look, she's like, look away, look away. But like after she's like that, she's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. That and greens. Of course, she's going to stay away from the carbs because her ancestors didn't eat carbs until like 1860, right? So again, it's just work within the spectrum, find out what works best for you. But we really want to be at the bare minimum of the protein that you need for optimal health. Like I said, play with the protein calculator. Like I found out that I was not getting nearly enough protein. Like I was feeling like crap on a vegan diet. And then I calculated, I was like, I'm not even getting the bare minimum of the bare minimum. So yeah, she was going crazy. She was chowing down on a giant at Pride. It was very funny. I was like, where is that place? No, I don't eat that way, but yeah. All right. So then number 4 is just about glucose regulation. And this is studies that have to do with just the shock the body has to go through when it has to process elevated glucose levels. And so this goes back to this idea of fasting or skipping a meal, or that our ancestors probably were not as well fed as we are. Move this a little bit. Anybody have any comments? And talk about your ancestors too. Like, I am half British, French, Hungarian, German, Jewish, right? So that's pretty much the same climate, right? Northern European, fish. They ate fish, potatoes, right? Fish, potatoes, greens, a lot of oats, right? Which grew free. They were free to collect. Like, why not collect the oats? They're free. And fattening, right? So my ancestors ate a lot of grain, right? So that's going to be different than, say, if I have a client that's coming in who's an Inuit, their blood sugar is going to be completely different than me. I do really great with bread. I don't do great with American bread. I definitely feel different when I eat, say, if you've ever had a chance, if you've ever been lucky enough to go on a vacation to Europe, the bread's incredible, but it's a different strain. And I think that that's where ancestry comes in, because the Americans are growing a genetically modified Russian hardy red, and it's got a much higher allergy, and allergies elevate cortisol. They elevate your inflammatory markers. So people are more active when they're on vacation, but there's also evidence that it's less inflammatory, which means less elevation of cortisol. So I recently bought einkorn, which is the biblical wheat that's being grown right now. And you can get that on Amazon. You can get it at Whole Foods. Um, and you might do better on einkorn than, say, on the American genetically modified Russian hardy red. Okay. All right. And so the glucose regulation. So people have talked about like fasting. For example, I'm trying right now, because I did get overweight, to stop eating at 6 p.m. I'm mostly plant-based. I'm mostly vegan, except that I'm on the spectrum. I decided to Dean Ornish. Dr. Dean Ornish was the first to do studies in heart disease. He's a cardiologist. He's the guy that took everybody on the cruise, and when they came back, they had their heart disease was reversed because he could control their diets. That was Dean Ornish. Okay, so those studies were in the 70s, and the guy's still healthy and running around because, they have like total cholesterol of like 140 or whatever. But so Dean Ornish spectrum. So I do let myself have, you want to avoid fat as much as possible, like remove the skin, count your try and reduce your calories in, calories out. Go skinless, wash the fat off, boiled meat, and rinsing the water, and just eating the chicken without the skin, removing the skin, boiling it, cutting off the fat, and having boiled chicken with your beans. If you're, to supplement your beans, if you are doing beans. So some people will do that. You'll see that is extremely common in South and Central America because meat is so precious. So they'll cook the beans, and then they'll cook a little bit of chicken on the side, and then you get a little bit of chicken. So that 20% that you maybe have a deficit because you're having trouble digesting the protein, a little bit of adding 20% to the protein of an animal protein is going to up the bioavailability. Another is to crack the bones, boil the marrow, and create a stock pot. And that way you can get the collagen and the nutrients. And so some people will make a bone broth. It's protective of the skin, the collagen, and again, it's going to get you to fall below, you're going to stay within that 10% range. If your people are more from the north and if you're more physically active and an athlete, then you're going to want to get to closer to 20% of total caloric intake, being probably from an animal source. Some people can be 100% vegan. Usually we see this with people who are type A blood type. We see it a lot in Asian populations and yes, believe it or not, and surprisingly in Scandinavia, which surprised me because it's a diet that's heavy in fish. But even with type A, I recommend some fish. And we've done studies. I think somebody had asked again if I would talk about the studies. The studies that anthropologists have looked at, we've looked at two populations, both the populations that are on the marine land and both inland in, say, India. And if you're looking at, say, Jain population, which is plant-based inland, and then you go east of India into areas where they're consuming fish at least once a week, you're going to have less heart attack, even though they're consuming the same amount of calories. So the study suggested that the increase in omegas uh, in the diet, even if it was only one fish meal a week, that was being observed in East Indians was reducing their risk of heart disease compared to people inland that didn't have access to fish. So there you have it. And then the last thing we would say is moderate exercise. Remember that a plant-based whole food, simply prepared diet is the diet that is preferred around the world. Most of the world eats like this. Most of the world can't survive without rice. Rice is life. And remember, meat is a luxury item. It's something that you can have a little bit if you need it for your health. Thank the animal. If you need it, take it. If you are doing dairy, I know some people like to do the whole fat, but if you're already dealing with coronary artery disease and weight problems, I would encourage you to follow Dean Ornish's advice and do non-fat or 1% dairy and the skim mozzarella for cheese. Cost effective, like I said, daily walking is recommended. You can slow your pace. Make sure to eat the superfoods. We've talked about the superfoods in the past, or what we call the GBOMs, if you're having trouble remembering. So I'll go ahead and give you that now. The GBOMs are the greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, nuts, and seeds. And you want to make sure to always include those when you're shopping. Just go ahead and you can put GBOMs on your hand or whatever so that you remember that you have one of each of those at least in your basket when you are shopping. Yeah, and that, like I said, finally, this is the cheapest diet on the planet. Most of the world lives on grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds with a minimal amount of animal protein, and it appears to be the right diet for most of us. All right, that's what I have for you. And watch the oil. I think I've already said that. So minimal oil, minimal processing, and try and get a green. If you can get a green smoothie in every day, even if you're going and having a bacon cheeseburger with your family, at least you took care of breakfast, and it's cost effective. If you can get a great deal on iHerb and you can get like a 2-for-1, then like anything, ghee can be too much, but ghee is good for vata because seniors who are wasting away, we will give ghee. We will also massage dry skin with ghee, but like anything, we want people to dramatically reduce. It's considered a sign of generosity because people are very poor in some parts of India. So if they give you a dish that's swimming in ghee or swimming in oil, it's like it's almost like the lap of luxury. Look at the oil, look at that. And so for us to say less calories, less oil, less opulence, clean white rice, keep it. It's a new way of thinking, But you guys are saying something. The difference between collagen peptides and pea protein powder. Ultimately everything breaks down to peptides or small amino acid segments that can be digested and broken up. There is a difference between the collagen peptides and the proteins, and you also have to take into consideration bioavailability because of fiber, non-digestible carbs that are in there that the body has to tear through in order to get to the protein. So we have to we calculate how much protein is gained and how much protein is lost. And so we're talking about the average digestion, about 20-30% of your protein calories are lost in a vegan diet. So you supplement with protein powder. And if you're concerned about collagen, this is one of the reasons why vegans will sometimes do vegan collagen powders, which are high in some of the amino acids they're concerned about, but other people who tend to be plant-based but are not vegan will do bone broth. And that again goes back to Victorian living, that they would have the stock pots boiling to extract the nutrients from the bone. So again, this is frugal living. This is a homestead where everything was used. The bones were broken and boiled and used. The fat was saved and used sparingly. Everything, every rag was used. So same when you're in a village in India, in a remote area of East India where they have nothing. It's literally, this is pretty much all they have. In terms of the longest living people in the world, though, if we're looking at the blue zones here in the United States, and when we're looking at reversing coronary artery disease, which is the leading killer here in the United States, it's irrefutable that calorie restriction and a predominantly plant-based diet, 90% is recommended. If you feel like crap, then I say increase your protein. If plant protein isn't cutting it, some of the things that I recommend are peanut butter powder, which has had the oil removed. It's actually low in fat and packed with protein, because I don't do great on soybeans. Not that soybeans are going to hurt you. It's just they have a hard shell and are hard to digest. Sprouted soybeans, sprouted tofu may be easier for you to digest. I'd like to do the Impasse Prayer and just give you guys, anybody needs a healing or a remote view before we close today. I love peanut butter and jelly, yeah. And one of the other things that the protein powder is put into animal feed for protein. It's a waste product when they make protein, when they make peanut oil. The peanut oil is for frying. But then when you make the peanut oil, you press it, you've got protein, you've got this peanut powder. So what do you do with it? Well, you can put it in baking, you can feed it to your animals, the pigs, etc. Or another thing is it's now being a protein source. UNESCO, United Nations is using it in areas, remote villages where children in Africa, they're just not getting enough protein in some areas. But bring on the delicious peanut butter powder, yum, yum. And you can put it in soup too and make a peanut soup. So I got some peanut powder. I think I got the cheapest deal at Safeway. And I put some of that in my smoothie just to add. I'm trying to be mindful to increase my protein just because, and so I've increased my protein to where UNESCO says, and if I crave meat, I have it. That's basically my policy. And I try to have fish once a week. Ghee is clarified butter that's slowly cooked on top of a stove, and then the white foam is the lactose, and you just remove the lactose, and so it has a very low amount of lactose. So people who are lactose intolerant tend to be okay with ghee. Yeah, collagen is needed for ligaments and tissue repair. It's one of the reasons why even some vegans will still do the bones. They will still eat. All right, let's do the Impasse Prayer. Yeah, pancake batter. What a great idea. It's used a lot in African cooking. Man, is it good. I just discovered it, and it's like I want to roll around in it. Mushrooms are great for you. It's not the same as candida. Candida is not a mushroom. Candida is in the same phylum, but it's not, it's a different thing altogether. Mushrooms, I recommend slow cooking them if you're trying to get the nutrition out of them. First off, they have protein. They also have D2, which is a form of bioavailable vitamin D. And they also contain something called beta glucans. And beta glucans have been found to be helpful in protecting us, both our cardio health, but also cancer prevention. Yeah. Green tea, studies have also been found on green tea, matcha tea, oolong tea, and just regular green tea, gunpowder. Always make a pot for yourself. Pour a fresh glass of water and then pour a little bit of that tea into it so it's not too strong, so that the water you drink always has a little bit of tea essence in it. That's something I learned from the Chinese. And that will dramatically reduce your hunger so that you're not eating at night, but it will not be so strong to keep you up at night. Other bitters that can be helpful to help reduce appetite, just good old-fashioned, any kind of tea, but in people doing a liver detox, I recommend dandelion leaf, because it's a bitter, which is an appetite suppressant. It raises serotonin for depression. It also helps with the liver. I love canning, as long as my mother canned. Okay, I want to do the Impasse Prayer. I have people ask. Thanks, you guys. I love you guys. You guys are great. All right, I want to call on white light protection for myself and this community as we ask permission from Spirit to access the Akashic records. We call on our spirit guides and good angels to be with us. Please give us the clarity and the wisdom that is needed to empower all of us on our journey to make the best decisions for ourselves, our families, the planet, the people we love, but also to help those that we may have strife with. And together collectively we say, Amen. All right, I think we have some questions from members. I just want to get to them. So I think Kel Bell had a question. Let's see here. She said, I just received a job offer yesterday. Can you tell me if it is best for me to accept this job offer? Let's see what the cards look like. I don't want to be the final decision. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only, Miss Kel Bell. But congratulations on your job offer. Isn't it fun hanging out? Don't you just love Saturdays? They're so laid back. I accidentally made this open to the public, I think, but that's okay. This is usually for private, but they can see us hanging out. This is what we do. We talk about naturopathic medicine, the latest science, how to be healthy and happy. And we give private readings to people. It's fun. All right, Kel Bell. Wow, you gave me quite a story, Kel Bell. Are you sure you want to work for someone and you don't want to work for yourself? Because you don't mind me being honest with you. I mean, I have to just tell people how I feel. I feel when I go into your energy that I've had some really terrible things happen to me at my job, to the point where I'm kind of like terrified to work for anybody. I feel like I have a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder. So how did I get into that remote was through the Ten of Swords. So I'm kind of a little bit worried. I hope if you had some negative experience happen to you at your job that you had a chance to heal or get over it or whatever. But you can see you're coming out of, I don't know if it was your job or what happened, but you're coming out of a Ten of Swords. There's your Ace of Cups, which is your offer. Here's what I can tell you about the job. These are very, very, very smart people, Kel. This is a smart woman. I see a smart woman who she is no BS. If you lie to her, she's going to know. If you can work for somebody like that and just be honest, you don't have to be afraid, but this is a no BS person. Look at this. Look at who she's working for. You don't lie to the high priestess. You don't play games with a boss like that. She's offering you the job. Raphael. She'll be your best loyal ally in the world as long as you don't BS her. That's how I would interpret it. The hope and the fear that you're not going to get anything else. Knight of Pentacles. This is the end of the road. Ace of Swords. I won't be victorious. Wow. They say that baby boomers have the most irrational expectations because they were raised with a can do. But the problem is that so many were born that there was too much competition, and that caused baby boomers to become depressed and cynical because everybody got the same speech. But the problem is it was this massive influx of babies after World War II. And so we also had the most competition of any generation. So you can see here the hope and fear to be victorious, and also a feeling like it's the end of the road. So I feel like, hey man, I'm going to take this, and I'm never going to have this dream, and it's never going to happen for me. And that is my feeling. A final outcome for you is Knight of Pentacles, holding on to her power, her money, and then scholarship and academia. It doesn't mean that you have to give up your dreams of independent work. But the best thing going forward is if you decide to take this position, that you be honest with this person. Also, I feel like this is a desire this person has to be financially independent. You can see very clearly the retirement card, Knight of Pentacles, with an independence card. So yeah, I can see your concerns and desire to be independent. I feel that it's okay to work there. And by working there, you're not saying no to any other options down the road. I hope that helped. That was very interesting. Wow. Don't text and drive, Tarena. What helps the liver? This is a question by Marie Henson. Fasting helps the liver. When we think about conditions like fatty liver disease, one of the liver is a storage unit. You have to think about the liver as the function of the liver is that it stores things. It does a lot of things, but one of the things it does is it cleans the blood, of course, but it also stores things. One of the things it does when it cleans the blood is it collects things like vitamins, right? Vitamin K it stores, the fat soluble vitamins, but also for a short time, the B vitamins can be stored as well in the liver. So it's a storage unit. The other thing that it does is it stores carbohydrates really, really well. So anytime you eat bread, it's going straight to the bloodstream, and from the stomach to the bloodstream, and from that vein, it's going directly to the liver. I know, seems so unfair. So that piece of white bread is going to hit your stomach. It's going to be converted to sugar, and that sugar is going to hit a vein, a gastric vein that goes directly to the liver. And from there, it's going to be broken down, and it's going to be stored in a closet of hangers called glycogen until you need it. And then you burn it when you run the Boston Marathon. But what happens if you eat too many supersized meals? What happens? Your closet gets full, right? And there's no room for all of those glycogen stores. There's no room for all of those hangers. So your body has to produce a hanger that has 3 hangers on it. You ever seen one of those hangers that has 3 hangers on it? Tri-hangers? It makes your stuffed closet a little bit less stuffy. Well, your liver does the same thing with its closet. It's called a triglyceride. Yeah, you're eating too many Big Macs, so now your liver closet is converting that glycogen into triglycerides. What happens if you keep eating and you're packed solid with triglycerides? it's converted to a fat. So now the triglyceride is converted to a fat molecule. And at that point, you have a condition called fatty liver disease. What happens if your liver is fatty? It kills the liver cells, and you can actually have liver damage. And you'll see an elevation of the liver enzymes. So this is what happened in Super Size Me. He kept eating glucose, 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 and his liver simply couldn't store all of the glucose. And so he started getting fat stores. And then at that point, his liver enzymes began to become elevated because he was actually damaging his liver. So it goes back to calorie restriction, that we actually calculate how many calories you need to be at optimal weight. And an optimal weight for a senior is going to be a little bit more generous than, say, somebody who's younger. And that's because we want to have enough fat to be producing estrogen 3. The estriol, or the E3 that's produced by the fat, which is a weak estrogen that's going to work as a growth hormone to help with bone health. However, too much fat and too much estrogen can also be a problem. It's one of the reasons I think I've had more hot flashes, is because my weight went up. And it also it can lead to increases in E2. E3 can be converted to E2, which is a stronger form of estrogen that's associated with breast cancer, and it's inflammatory. So again, we see this correlation between higher weight and increased risk for certain diseases like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, etc. Oh, it's you wanna eat, grains in their whole if you eat grains that are not in their whole form, they have a high glycemic index, Lynn. So when we talk about grains not being good for you, usually that's from these carnivore people, and that's not based on science. Grains are very good for you, but you wanna have them in their whole form. So when we think about the best grains and seeds, number 1 is quinoa. Quinoa is expensive, but the great thing about quinoa is that 7 grams of complete protein in a cup. So what I do, because quinoa is expensive, I like the short grain brown rice, which also has a very low glycemic index. And I will, to spread out the quinoa and to lower the glycemic index. The glycemic index is a measure of how quickly glucose hits my liver, right? So we want to be, when we're monitoring how fast glucose is going to hit the bloodstream, if this is going to shock the liver, etc. We want a slow burning carbohydrate, right? So when we're measuring the how rapid, it's the glycemic index. When we're talking about how much in that time period, we're talking about the glycemic load. So if I take a spoonful of honey, I know that the glycemic index is that 100%, like in no time, 100% of that glucose is going to hit my bloodstream in no time, because it's pure glucose. And then I can calculate the actual glycemic load, the amount I actually took in that 10 minutes or 30 minutes. So that's the difference between an index and a load. Index is how slowly it burns. So if we're talking about eating the slower burning foods, you're talking about avoiding white foods, white flour, white potato, um, if you're talking about grains that have a slow burning, they're slow burning, still cut oats, thick cut oats. Also, if you put some of that peanut butter powder that I was telling you about, if you sprinkle that on it, that's going to also drop the glycemic load. And so many naturopathic doctors will recommend, particularly with our vegans we're trying to get their protein up, when you make your oatmeal, you can just put in a spoon of peanut protein. And again, that's going to raise it another 8 grams of protein. Um, But yeah, kasha also has a very, very low glycemic index. White flour has a glycemic index close to 100. And whole grain brown flour is not much better, but einkorn is pretty good. If you're allergic to wheat, then you may want to give up wheat. Oh, and fish too, huh? Oh, well, what are you eating? Lean chicken? They say buffalo is really good for you too. Buffalo, if you like buffalo. For menstruating women, buffalo is supposed to be very good. Yeah, I think that if you can get if you find that you're eating a lot of wheat and you have what's called wheat belly, then yeah, giving up wheat can be very helpful. Giving up soda pop, chicken and turkey. Oh yeah, I like turkey because turkey is lean. The other great thing about turkey is that it's not genetically much different than a wild turkey. They haven't really messed. Uh, yeah, I'm the same as you, Andrea. They haven't really messed with the genetics of turkey. I almost kind of prefer turkey to chicken. I always eat, it's this, I think I'm almost like sensitive. I've developed an intolerance to too much chicken. But if I am going to do the chicken, I'll do it where it's broiled, where the fats come off, the skin, you've lost the fat, or turkey meat, which is going to be lean. And again, you don't want to overdo it. You just want to calculate for what you need and no more. Venison is great. I grew up in Oregon, and so yeah, it was very common. Yeah. All right. Well, that was a fun tea time, get together, spa day. I hope everybody's questions got answered. Oh, you went from, yeah, boy, a lot of people get that way with wheat. Man, I hear you, but I mean, it's just you got a glycemic index. It's so easy. First off, 100%. It's not like it has high non-digestible fiber with a low glycemic index. An example of that would be a piece of like romaine lettuce where you've got your body has to rip through the netting of the fiber to get to the glucose. That sweet taste you taste when you eat really great lettuce, that's the glucose. But it takes your body an hour to get it out of that damn net. So imagine the enzymes just having to go into a net and I got a glucose. It takes forever, right? So you're never going to have a glucose spike. You're not going to it's not going to cause your pancreas to overwork. It's not going to overwork your liver, and it's going to have much less calories overall. Whereas no problem with white flour, right? It's like boom, 100% is in your bloodstream. 100% of the glucose is going to be it's got an index of 100%, so it's just pure sugar, and the load is really, really high. So, of course, if you're just loading up on bread, you're going to have challenges. And I think that the guy in Super Size Me, bread and super sodas, yeah, man, that's just a carbohydrate nightmare. At the same time, slow burning carbohydrates like salads and quinoa and steel cut oats or thick cut oats, kasha, amaranth, is really good for you. Barley, yeah, hold barley. That's sacred. You try to take away someone's barley in Tibet, you're going to have problems. That's sampa, right? We're not talking about processed barley. We're talking about you pick the barley, you wash it, you roast it, you grind it up into a flour, pour some boiling tea over it, and you eat it. That's like, so you can imagine that has with a little bit of butter. So that's a very different glycemic index than, say, quick oats, like Marie Henson's talking about. That's the combination of the fact that it's a coarse grind, the fact that it's a whole grain, the fact that they mix it with a little bit of butter. You probably wouldn't have a glycemic crash if you were eating something like sampa, which is a traditional barley food. Yeah, cinnamon is great. Gidget, great question. Cinnamon has been found to sensitize insulin receptors. Yeah, you're smart, Gigi. You knew that. All right, you guys are smarter than me, obviously. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of the day. I'm gonna try and get out some exercise. Did y'all have fun? Nice conversation today. Yeah. With not doing beans, take a look at the red lentil Indian dolls that are being made. Be easy on the ghee. Don't do a lot of ghee, but a light Indian doll made with either the small yellow split or the red. That's called baby doll for baby, first baby's doll. And don't have it be more than 10 to 20% next to your rice. So when baby's learning to digest beans, just treat yourself the same way. Do the yellow split easy baby doll. I just made some of that. It's delicious. Or do the red. And when you have your rice, it can be, a white rice if you're having digestive problems, but think about trying to, you can mix it with brown or try and have a little bit of brown. But if your fiber content is too high and you're struggling, go ahead and let yourself have a little bit of the white rice. And then the dal, you only want the dal to be 10 to 20% of the percentage of the rice. So say you had a cup of rice, you would do like less than a quarter of a cup of the dal. And the other thing you can do is you can add asafoetida into the dal when you cook it. And also some of the other spices like turmeric to help the enzymes inside the turmeric and the ginger. If you look at some of the cooking tutorials, will also break down the complex carbohydrates. Slow cooking them can also help. Yeah, I like the short grain, but everybody's different. God, this was fun. I love talking shop. All right, be well, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Thank you for the support, everyone. Thank you for the memberships.